Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, welcome. As a homemaker, one thing I need to do often is reevaluate the things in my home. I've been really putting this task off for quite a while, but today's the day and I'm going to tackle the kitchen. In today's video, I'm going to declutter the kitchen and put things where they make sense. I'm also going to tidy up some around the house. But I wanted to also discuss the steps that we take as homemakers to simplify our lives and talk about how we as homemakers can often feel that sense of overwhelm in our lives. So let's get to the root of it all. Last month, we did a budget-friendly kitchen island makeover, and I am still in love with how it turned out. However, afterwards, I felt like the flow of my kitchen was off. It felt like nothing really made sense anymore because we kind of just put stuff randomly away when we were finished with our project. For example, I have 3 different drawers in the kitchen that have silverware and utensils in them. 4 if you count my husband's grilling utensils, and none of them are actually near each other. One of them is next to the fridge, one is on the right hand side of the oven, and one is across the kitchen by the dishwasher. Half of the stuff we don't even use often either, so I'm going through and donating anything that we don't have a use for anymore or that we don't use often enough to keep around. You're going to see me go back and forth some, putting some items in drawers and then moving everything around completely. I'm just trying to figure out what works best for our kitchen and how everything should be put away based on the flow of our kitchen. This task is something that I have struggled with for a while, which is probably why I put it off for so long in the first place. I focused way too much on where things should go, and then I tend to become overwhelmed trying to find the perfect solution, which in reality, there really is no correct way, and it's just something that I've stressed over for far too long for really no reason. We are also going to be working in a different video on redoing our pantry and doing like a pantry makeover, and I am hopeful that after we get everything done with our kitchen, that the pantry will feel a lot better. It also feels like it's kind of in disarray. It feels like it's always a mess, and there's really not a clear spot for everything in it. So I'm hoping a whole revamp of our pantry will also make me feel a lot better about just the organization in my kitchen in general. If you were also needing ideas on how to organize a pantry, I should have that video up this weekend, so you can tune in for that. I talk a lot with other moms, and one of the most common struggles I hear is they're overwhelmed. Overwhelmed with day-to-day tasks, overwhelmed with cooking, with doing the dishes, with laundry, with keeping the house in working order. I have been a homemaker for many years. My oldest child is about to turn 15, and so I've been doing this quite a while, but I know over the years it can feel like there is a lot of overwhelm, and I feel like a lot of that comes with routine and how things are done and maintained around the house. I am by no means a minimalist, but I believe if you have an abundance of things in your home, it has a way of adding to the chaos of life. The less stuff that you have, the less stuff that you have to take care of. So I think one of the first steps as a homemaker to working towards not feeling constantly overwhelmed is really going through your house and decluttering. Going through and minimizing as much as you possibly can, and just keeping things that have a purpose, have a use, or really have that sentimental value for you. Which I understand when you are living frugally on a budget or with kids, you have a tendency to want to hold on to items in case you need them. This is something that I still go through, I still experience, because I do try to stay on a very limited budget. And so I tend to keep things that I don't really need, but I feel like I need in case I end up in a situation where I need that item. But in situations, you usually don't need those items. You can get rid of those items, and oftentimes I don't even think about them anymore. It's just out of sight, out of mind. And a lot of the items that, if you're like, oh darn, I got rid of my rolling pins, for instance, you can just replace it with a different item. So using my rolling pins as an example, I actually currently do not have any. We used the couple that I had when my daughter had an event at the beginning of summer. My husband made them into displays for her bracelets because she was doing a booth at a local event where she made bracelets, and then she also made baked goods. And so we thought it was kind of a cute idea to put her bracelets on rolling pin displays because it kind of tied both of them in. But it left me with no rolling pins in my kitchen. And yes, they're very cheap. You can often get them at thrift stores and stuff like that. But it's just something that I find I can usually use something else. And I went many, many years without even having rolling pins. So I know firsthand that I don't really need them. I often will use just like a jar or something. I have this one thing that I do use often. I don't even know what it's called, but it's similar to a rolling pin, and it is not nearly as easy. But for many years, my daughter and I would actually just use jars to roll out like homemade noodles or pie crusts and stuff, because we would have some round jars that I would end up keeping from pasta sauce or whatever. And we found that that was just as easy to use. So for many years, we got by with just using jars to roll out our baked goods. And now that I have no rolling pins, I don't really need them. A lot of times, things that you get rid of, it's very similar. You get rid of them because you don't use them very often. And I think you worry too much before you get rid of them. But after, you don't really notice it. You can live without those items. And if you do happen to have a situation where you're like, oh man, I threw that all away and now I don't have it, often you can remedy that by just replacing it with another item, even though that item is not for that use, but it could be used for that purpose. I think we create too much stress around the items in our homes. We hang on to too many things, thinking that someday we'll use them, someday we'll have purpose for it, and it's just really not worth that mental capacity that you keep for that item. I think another example of holding on to things is gifts. A lot of times we are gifted things that don't necessarily make a lot of sense for our lives. It's just something that, was nice, but we don't need. We don't really have a purpose for. And I think a lot of us tend to hang on to those items because they were gifted to us, almost like I don't want them to get upset, or I don't want them to think that I didn't like the gift. But we need to realize that we can't always hang on to everything, and that ultimately it was a very nice that you were gifted, but they're not wanting you to stress over this item. And if keeping it in your house is adding to your clutter and causing you to stress, it's really not worth it when you think about it. Another thing that really adds up in kitchens are kitchen gadgets. You can often find other ways of doing things without having a million kitchen gadgets. I like to keep things really simple in my home and in my kitchen, so I don't really have a lot of kitchen gadgets. It's less to store and it's less to have to take care of. And the season of life that I'm in, I have too much to take care of already. So it's all about what I can take off of my plate. What can I eliminate to make my life a little easier? As I'm going through my kitchen and my cabinets, I'm noticing that I have a lot of pots and pans and the lids for those items. I was gifted the red set here from my mother-in-law. And then I think it was last year or the year before, my husband gifted me a black set. And then I also have some odds and ends from just older sets that I had. But I'm going through and I'm noticing I have way too much. And a lot of these I don't really use. I tend to grab for the same pots, the same pans whenever I am cooking. And so a lot of them go unused. And I have duplicates of the same sizes and stuff. So I'm keeping some that I know that we reach for on a regular basis. And I'm also trying to keep a couple extra because we do host for a couple of holidays, Christmas being one of the larger ones. And so I want to make sure that we have plenty of pots and pans for the stuff that we'll be cooking. But anything beyond that, I am donating. So I do not end up showing you all the stuff that I'm donating. It ended up getting dark and my older two kids boxed everything up and put it in the car for me. So I didn't get a chance to actually show all the things that I am donating, but I ended up getting rid of so much stuff that I actually have some empty drawers and some empty cabinets. So I'm pretty excited about that. I know in a previous video I mentioned that there is a local mom that she is kind of struggling right now. Her family is newer to the area and they don't have very much. She has two children that are my younger one's sizes. So we recently just went through and all of their clothes and toys, and we were able to donate quite a bit to them. And then we also have been going through and furniture, just really anything that we think can be of use to them. My mom knows them very well, so she talks to them and, discusses like, could you use this? And so it's been really nice to go through my house and be able to declutter and have a family that I'm donating to that really is so appreciative of the stuff. So I'm keeping that in mind when I went through my kitchen of the stuff that I have barely used, but I don't have a purpose for. I know that this family will really enjoy having. So when I say I'm donating, most of my items are actually going to this family, this local family that can really use the stuff at the time. This is the next day, if you can't tell. It is so much nicer. It has rained so much recently that this one sunny day just felt like my mood was completely uplifted. But I am going around and just kind of still going through stuff. I'm back in the kitchen going through, we have little glass plates and bowls and stuff in this area. And a lot of stuff that I thrift ends up in this area. So I'm going through and just reevaluating everything. What do I need? What can I get rid of? And just reorganizing the whole area. And that's kind of what I'm doing throughout this whole video, going from area to area in my house and reevaluating the area. What can I get rid of? What needs wiped down? Just looking at the area and seeing what it needs, and then giving it the attention that it needs. When I'm talking to these moms, a lot of the times I hear them say that they have too much laundry to do, or their house is always a disaster, or how groceries are too expensive and they need to limit their groceries, but they don't really have any ideas of how to cook more frugally. Some of that has to do with routine and maybe not having a good routine in place, but a lot of it I think can also be managed just by simplifying the things more in their homes. Going around and working on all the areas in my house is not a daily routine of mine. Sometimes it's not even a weekly routine of mine, but I think as long as you're going around ever so often and addressing the areas that need addressed, going through and making sure that everything is of use in that area or is a sentimental item, you are in a routine of decluttering. You're in a routine of not constantly feeling overwhelmed by all the stuff that you own. It's just too much to take care of, and too much of a mental capacity is put on these items. So if you fall into a routine of constantly decluttering these items, you often don't feel overwhelmed by them. If you have too much laundry, start going through all of your clothes, your kids' clothes, and just getting rid of things. You don't need a million outfits. I tend to, when I'm cleaning, I will wear pretty similar. They're the same black leggings and a t-shirt usually, just because I'm cleaning. I want to be comfortable. And if I get dirty, if I stain my pants or my shirt, it's not that big of a deal. So often when I'm cleaning, I have the same outfits. And then I have just a handful of other items, kind of like a capsule wardrobe, where I can mix and match and wear seasonally, and I don't have an overwhelming amount of clothes to take care of. I try to do the same for my kids. I know recently it feels to me like it needs decluttered some more, but you don't really need too many items. You end up having to wash too much clothes, and then it just becomes unmanageable. I know this also has to do, it's not clothes, but sheets and blankets, comforters, they take up an insane amount of storage. I know that we have a lot of bulky comforters, and I periodically will go through them, but you really don't need very many. You don't need very many sheet sets. I try to keep just an extra one for everybody's bed. So I'll have an extra sheet set for everyone's bed in the house, and then one extra comforter set. Anything beyond that, my family in particular does not really need anything beyond that. We will just rotate between those, and then if we decide that we want something completely different, or a lot of times my boys' stuff, I don't know, they'll build forts and stuff, so they tend to get a lot more use out of their bedding, and it tends to get rips and stuff a lot quicker than everybody else's bedding in the house. So whenever they need new blankets or new sheets, I then will take either, their extra or the one that they were using, and I'll donate that or somehow get rid of it if it has a bunch of holes and stuff. So I do not hang on to a bunch of that stuff. In my opinion, it takes up way too much storage, and my house actually has quite a bit of storage, but when you hold on to those giant items that are unnecessary, that you don't end up using, they're not in your regular rotation, it just adds so much to it, and it's not necessary at all. So one of my biggest things to go through first is laundry. If you are feeling overwhelmed by your life and by laundry, that's something that you never can stay on top of, I think you need to go through it and massively declutter it. get down to the basics of your laundry, and then you're not going to be always struggling with the mountain of laundry. And if you've seen my other videos, you know I have endless amounts of laundry. So that is something that I need to continue to work on, continue to get down to the basics. There are 6 of us, so we go through quite a bit of laundry. But even though when we had Hayden and there was 7 of us, if you have a baby, you know that they have so many things, but I still kept it very minimal with him. He had a small rotation of clothes and blankets and stuff that we used, and that was it. So after he passed away, we must have accumulated quite a bit more clothes, because I feel like now I'm constantly fighting that mountain of laundry. But I know that if I get down to the very basics of it, it won't be that bad. And then you're just going through just a simple rotation, and it's really not something that you have to stress over or manage very much once you get to the basics of it. Also, the same goes for things around your house. If you are struggling with mass amounts of toys and your house always being a disaster, and you constantly having to tell your kids to pick up their toys, and I know how much of a burden that can be. I have 2 little ones, and they always have a ton of toys. They are gifted so many toys from grandparents and aunts and uncles all year round, and then when Christmas comes around, it just seems unmanageable. This is something that I deal with right before Christmas every year. We do a massive declutter of our rooms and our items. Not necessarily just clothes, but we pay special attention to our hobby items and our toys in our kids' rooms. So right before Christmas every year, I make a huge point to go through with each of our kids and really declutter their things, because even though we don't gift our kids a lot during the year, they get a lot of gifts during Christmas in particular. So not just from us, but a ton of family members gift to our kids. So after Christmas, it becomes a lot. And so I have made a routine of teaching them to donate right before Christmas. I try all year round, but I really focus a lot right before Christmas on this, because it helps when Christmas rolls around and they're gifted all these items, and we're not struggling with this massive disaster with all their other toys too. And I find that when you start them young and you make more of a routine of it, they don't fight you as much about it. My boys, they have some toys that they cannot part with, but other items they're happy to. They're happy to give, because they know that they're giving to another child. And that makes them really happy, because they almost feel like they're gifting a child. So I think if you're struggling with a disaster, you really need to go through your toys with your children, have them be a part of it, and go through and just what is causing the mess. Get to the root of the items and what can you part with. Little by little, it will feel significantly better, and it will be almost like a huge weight lifted from your shoulders, because you don't have to have that mental capacity for those items any longer. I have another YouTube friend that she is struggling with anxiety and depression. And so she is going through her house and getting rid of so many things. Her house has built up a lot of clutter during this depression and anxiety episode. And so she is going through slowly and getting rid of those things that she doesn't need any longer. And It's not something that is a massive, huge turnaround for her. She is only working on one corner or one area of one room at a time, and that's okay. To go at your own pace, eventually you'll end up getting to the point where you're not feeling that constant overwhelm. You're not feeling like you have all this stuff to manage because you've slowly taken care of it. Another way of simplifying your house is really going through and looking at your groceries and your budget. I talk to friends often about how they can bring their grocery budget down, and it usually doesn't involve a completely stocked pantry and to have a bunch of things for meals for their family. One thing I've really tried focusing on my channel is simple and affordable meals. I know so many people are struggling right now with how these grocery prices are, and I want to show that meals can be made and be done on a small budget. I try to share how you can make simple but delicious meals and make them stretch for your family. I recently just challenged myself to do a full week of meals for our family of 6 with only a budget of $100. We are a homeschool family, so we eat 3 meals a day, every day at home. My husband also goes and works on home construction sites, so he packs his lunch every single day. If you think about it, $100 is not going to get you very far. But we are on day 6 currently, and we have only needed a gallon of milk. It can be done if you simplify the things in your pantry and really get back to the basics. Not every meal has to be special. It doesn't have to be perfect. There are times for that, sure, but there are also plenty of times where you can just do breakfast for dinner. You can do tacos or spaghetti, just sandwiches, grilled cheese, and soup. And none of those things are very expensive to make. Part of being a homemaker is keeping track of the inventory in your home, really knowing what you have and what you need. I meal plan in my house because that is what works best financially and what gives us a peace of mind, but not everybody is like that. And for those who find it difficult to stick to a meal plan, I usually suggest with going more of a meal flow approach. I'll explain that. When I am not meal planning, I often will keep meals very simple. That way I can buy the things that I know I would need and just kind of go with the flow that week. When I meal plan, I buy the groceries based on the meals that I'm planning on making. But when you're just going with the flow, you'll just buy basic ingredients and then make meals based on those. For example, a lot of the meals will be meat, a starch, and some kind of vegetable. So you will buy mostly those items and then just make meals out of those items. If you're managing your inventory and have a good understanding of what you have, it will eliminate that feeling of overwhelm at meal times. Something that I have thought about sharing on my channel is some of my meal plans. Since I see so many people can probably benefit from them, if you would like for me to start posting those, please let me know in the comments below. Another way to simplify your life and your home is to let go of perfection. This is something that I really struggle with, but when you prioritize things, you might realize that there are a lot of things that you don't really care too much about, and you shouldn't give as much of your time and attention to. There's a saying that I think is progress over perfection. And one thing I think that makes it especially difficult for homemakers these days is social media. Basically, everyone has the internet at their fingertips, and it's so easy to get drawn in and see all these perfect homes and perfect homestead routines and think to ourselves that it's all manageable. But in all honesty, it's usually not. And I think too many people get on social media and then complicate their lives by trying to accomplish too much. When you are adding too much to your plate and you are bringing too much into your home, that clutter becomes such a huge sense of overwhelm, and you have that constant to-do list running through your head. By prioritizing your home and getting rid of anything that is not a priority, you will be freeing up that headspace and you won't have that constant feeling of overwhelm. Thank you for spending the day with me as I went around and reevaluated some of my spaces. If you find yourself also feeling overwhelmed in certain areas, I encourage you to reevaluate some of your spaces too. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time. Bye.